This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Darrin Schenck, self-optimization coach from Phoenix, Arizona. Darrin is a former pro racquetball player. He was top 20 in the world. After retirement from competition, he switched to coaching and has spent 14 years as a head coach at Arizona State University. He was 2 times Coach of the Year. His survival of a head-on crash with a wrong-way drunk driver. This crash turned out to be his motivation to become public speaker, and he speaks on a variety of topics in an effort to shorten learning curve of others. He has released his own phone app, Chatterbox, which is available in the app stores for both iPhone and Android. He's also VP of sales. He's doing an increasing number of public speaking, and he's recurring guest lecturer for the Carey School of Business at Arizona State University and the Franke School of Business at Northern Arizona University as well. Darrin, please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Well, thanks, Peter. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast and look forward to our conversation. Well, you covered a lot of the highlights. I was very fortunate to have an athletic background. Prior to my racquetball days, I thought I was going to be a high school wrestler who ended up getting a scholarship to college for my efforts on the mat. Turned out that I had a neck injury my freshman year of high school, and that definitely pivoted me in another direction. But one of those odd life coincidences, similar to the crash with the drunk driver, what was at the time seemed like the worst thing that happened to me turned out to lead to something bigger and better than I ever imagined. I started playing racquetball because of that wrestling injury, ending that phase of my life and allowing me to do something different. So, as a quick takeaway, even though we're just getting started here, I always like to remind people that when something happens, if it's deemed negative at the time, if you give it enough time, at some point you will see some of the silver lining or some of the positive outcomes that would be associated with that very negative initial event.
Mm-hmm. So you never lose, you're just learning.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I don't know who was credited with saying this first. I've seen this quote multiple places. I'm a huge professional tennis fan. Jimmy Connors, if you're old enough to know who that is referencing, was always quoted as saying, "I never lost a match. I just ran out of time before I solved the problem." And I kind of look at life that way in general, right? I've had the opportunity to explore different passions and pursuits, and some of them take a long time to really get proficient at. But eventually, if I put enough time and effort into it, I solve the problem, right?
Oh, very optimistic. So is this also with your self-improvement and how you become the coach for self-improvement?
Yeah, so that athletic background is a great building block to have discipline in as a go-to skill for the rest of your life. I don't have kids myself, but coaching at the college level and even younger than that, I know how much benefit some kind of structured and team environment can have for people in learning that skill in that environment of the sport, and then transferring that into lots of other applications, like your friendships and your relationships, your work environment in a team environment, and when you have to work on your own. All of those things I have drawn from my athletic background and my experience with struggles and failures and having to backtrack and redo things to get another step or two forward. All of that kind of lends itself right into that self-improvement mindset. So for me, I've had the luxury of learning from a lot of other people, both athletes and coaches alike, and consolidating a lot of that knowledge and being able to use it for myself and share that with others as well.
Yeah, you also said that you were coach for 14 years, and that is a long time, a lot of experience. So many generation of students.
Yep.
How would you define self-improvement? What is your definition?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I believe it varies with every individual person, whether whether we're actually discussing like if they would be a good fit as a coaching client or not. We all have areas that need improvement. We all have things that we're good at. So, for me, there's things that I work on all the time, and balance is one of my struggles, because if your goal is to be the best of the best at something, balance is almost out the window. You have to be obsessive if you want to outshine almost everybody else that's trying to do the same thing that you do. So for me, for example, in racquetball, I got a little bit of a late start. Again, in high school, I was trying to be a wrestler, so I didn't pick up a racquetball racket until I was 15 years old. Well, if I had been a tennis player, if you're not on the world stage by 15, you've missed your window, right? There's very few players that go to college and then turn pro and have a successful career. It's usually the juniors that make a big splash by 16 or 17 years old that end up becoming the dominant pros in their early 20s. So for me, because the sport of racquetball is so much smaller, I did get a late start, but I didn't have worldwide competition. I had US-based competition, and it is a smaller sport, and it's not the most lucrative sport, professional sport out there. So that's a detractor for other people to not dedicate their lives to it as well. So the playing field was a little bit more leveled and narrowed because of those things. So for me, when I was focused on that, it's all I did. Every decision I made was measured against, does this help me get to where I want to go? Now, in my older years, I've tried to strike a balance between the efforts that I put into my day job and currently my side gig, which is doing public speaking and coaching, balancing those things out with spending time with my wife and my family and doing things for fun. Despite the fact that I enjoy all three of those things that earn me a living, they still are work, technically speaking, right? And so there's time away has to be spent. And as we all know, but need reminding of once in a while, nobody gets out of this life alive, right? And you never know when your time is going to be up or the time of a loved one. So I make time to go on fishing trips with my dad. I make sure that, the holidays are never missed with the family, because you just don't know if you're going to get another chance to do that. So I'm getting better at the balancing act, so to speak. But I'm also not trying to be number one at something anymore. I'm very good at my day job craft of sales, and I'm learning to be a better public speaker, and I'm always learning and growing as a coach. But my goal isn't to be the next to unseat Tony Robbins as the number one guru for personal growth and development, right? I'm just trying to help a few people along the way and make sure that I can help shorten their own learning curves and watch them go out and do great things.
So if I understand correctly, self-optimization is not just to improve in some specific skill or area or to get a new expertise, but is also about giving up other areas, or let's say neglect them if it's not too strong of the word, in order to be proficient or better at one skill. Is that so?
Again, it depends on what you're looking to do. If I'm working with an athlete that's at the college level and is looking to turn professional, we want to break down every single thing they do all day long and eliminate the things that are not contributing to moving them forward. If it's an executive, you might be great at your job, but at what cost? Is your home life suffering? Have you never been to one of your kids' baseball games or one of the school plays? Right. So there's always a balancing act that everybody has to strive for. And again, it's very individualized because that college athlete that's trying to make the leap to the next level their journey is very, very different than that C-level executive who's doing a great job at work, but is suffering in other parts of their life. So I truly look at it as an individual journey for every person I speak to.
Mm-hmm. And now the $1 million question. Should we start the self-improvement journey on our own, or should we get a coach for it?
I think most people are very capable of doing it on their own to some degree, because it depends on where your areas of strength and weaknesses lie. If you are we'll just use sales since that's something I'm quite familiar with. If you're very good in the sales arena, but you're a terrible communicator to the rest of your team who has to execute what the service or product that you went out and sold, that is a major detractor to the overall success of your role in that company. And the same thing applies at home. You might be making a great living and paying all the bills, but if your connection with your spouse is not good, or you don't spend any time with your kids because you work all the time, those are areas that I refer to as self-optimization, because if you are proficient in certain areas, that skill set will carry out onto other skills and lift all of it up, right? The old adage of the rising tide raises all boats, right? Typically that is used in a sports context when it talks about money, right? One person making more money and then everybody else makes more money. Well, that analogy also applies to skills. If you are disciplined and have skills and patterns that you establish in one area of your life, those can be applied to any and all areas of your life, and therefore your entire skill set will raise up.
Okay.
I don't think I exactly answered your question. So for somebody to start that journey on their own, my suggestion is that you find an area that you're already pretty proficient in and make it better. And then find something that you need a little bit more work in and apply those same things that worked in that particular area that you were already fairly good at. And then keep working your way down. And if you hit a point where you're struggling to find what to do next, or where's my starting point in this particular area, that's the time to find a coach.
Okay. What do you think about the self-help books? Can they help on the journey?
Yes, but action is really where it matters, right? You can read all the books that you want, but if you read 3 of them and they're recognized books that lots of people say, hey, this one had a lot of info for me, it's time to pull the highlights and start forming a list of what you're going to do and then apply those things. I see an awful lot of people that spend a lot of time getting ready to get better, but never actually getting better, right? They're reading books, they're going to seminars, whatever it may be, and they don't ever feel like, okay, I'm finally ready to move forward and take action. The action is critical. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. You might be getting smarter, but you're not applying what you're learning.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What are the preconditions to start the self-improvement journey? You mentioned action. Is there any other precondition? When can the process of self-improvement even start?
Obviously the desire, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
And as a coach, when do you know that the person is ready to start?
Great question. So the desire to change is a big indicator. And that works on if you're doing self-improvement or if you're looking to hire a coach to help to assist in that process. If you have experienced enough pain that you're finally ready to change, now is the perfect time. Most people need to get uncomfortable enough with what they're currently doing to finally go, okay, it's time to make some changes. And we're recording this right after Valentine's Day. I use this analogy all the time, every year from January 1 until Valentine's Day on February 14th. The gym is busy as it's ever going to be all year long, right? People sign up on January 1st or December 31st. All right, this is the year I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to do it this time. And sure enough, within 6 weeks, the gym is back to its usual crowd of people who are always there at 6 a.m. working out, with a few additional people who have actually stuck to that New Year's resolution. Everybody else jumped in, they changed their diet, they started a new exercise program, they made a bunch of other radical changes in their life, and none of it sticks, right? It's too much too soon. They're trying to do too many things differently all at once, and it's so easy to fall back into your old patterns. So it's always best to do things incrementally and pick one thing to start with. And then once you're kind of off and running with that, then add something else to it, and then add something else to it. And again, whether that's with the help of a coach or just doing it yourself, if you can do things on a longer time scale, right? I will be 53 years old this year. There are habits that go back to my childhood that are very good habits that I have developed in my days as a wrestler and then starting out as a racquetball player. But there are also bad habits that I'm still trying to break, right? I'm not going to break a lifelong bad habit in 3 weeks. It just doesn't work that way. So I have to look at things on a longer timeline and be patient with myself and be happy with incremental improvement, not expect to leapfrog from here's what I did yesterday. Next week, I'm going to be a completely different person. Human beings don't operate that way.
Mm-hmm. From your experience with business people, where should a business person start the self-improvement journey? Which topic or which area is the most important or the best to start from?
I think that there's no stronger and better skill to work on than communication, because whether you're the salesperson or the CEO or somebody that works in operations or a frontline worker that answers the phones, your ability to communicate with other people and with your teammates is so critical to your success, as well as the overall company's success and your ability to move upward in that company. You might be a rock star sales guy, but if you are terrible with communicating details, deadlines that need to be met, things like that, the rest of the team is going to hate you. And that's going to make your job harder. And the clients are going to be unhappy as a result. So the better you can communicate with everybody around you, I believe you'll be a happier person. I know your life will be easier. You'll play fireman less often. You're not going to be putting out fires because of things that you caused, letting details slip through the cracks and not communicating well. So I think regardless of what role anybody plays, improving your communication skills is a very, very good place to start.
Okay. Do you consider mental healing or mental health and also physical health to be part of the self-improvement journey?
Without question. I have a coaching client that I'm currently working with that has a shoulder issue, and he's had it for a long time. Competitive racket sports player, plays some tennis and some pickleball and some racquetball. And it finally got bad enough that it was impacting his performance on the court. Well, it also impacts his efforts in the weight room. He can't train the same way that he used to because of that injury. And he can't lay on, like when he's laying in bed, he can't lay on his right side with his right arm under him because it's gotten to the point where that hurts. So that injury that was impacting one specific area maybe 6 months ago has now leaked into all these other areas. And so whether it's emotional damage of a bad breakup or getting fired from a job or a near miss on a lifetime goal that you were trying to achieve, but you fell short on, whatever it may be, and whether it's emotional healing or physical healing, again, we don't operate in silos as humans. One area of your life that is affected in a positive or negative manner, that is going to bleed over into pretty much every other facet of your life.
Okay. How important is discipline? You mentioned discipline before. How important is discipline, and is discipline more important than motivation on the self-improvement journey?
100% discipline is more important than motivation. And here's why. And I use this analogy already. For the first 3 weeks of January, a whole lot of people are motivated to go to the gym and work out and get in better shape. If you don't have the discipline to continue with that, the motivation will taper off, no question. And that's why, as of today, or the day after Valentine's Day, the gym was not as busy as it was before. Either somebody made some improvements and found a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or they gave up. Either way, that gym is back to the usual faces who I always see at 6 a.m., right? So and again, I don't remember who should be credited for this quote. It might be Marcus Aurelius, but you don't rise to the level of the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. Well, if you substitute the word training for habits or patterns or discipline, that's my exact philosophy on that. You have to become somebody that shows up at the gym at 6 o'clock every day. I highly, highly recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, because he does a phenomenal job of explaining how to become a person that develops the right habits and discipline, and not try to rely on motivation to get you out of bed before it's daylight on a cold wintry day to go to the gym, to go suffer for a little while before you go start your job, right? Mm-hmm. That he literally starts people out with the assignment of show up at the gym for 5 minutes, every day, 5 days a week for 2 weeks in a row. Don't do anything, just show up, walk in the door. Now you're somebody who shows up at the gym every day, 5 days a week. While you're there in week 3, why don't you start lifting a few weights here and there? You know, if you're not familiar with how to do that, maybe you take a training class or hire a personal trainer for one session to kind of show you around and get you started with things. But the baseline behavior pattern is I get up at 5:30, my clothes are already laid out, I get my gym clothes on, I get in the car, and I'm at the gym at 6 a.m. every day, 5 days a week. And then you build from there. And I think better than anybody I've ever heard or read, he illustrates how to do those things that in a manner that anybody could follow and benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Okay, based on your experiences, how should business people set their goals of self-improvement? And how important are goals in self-improvement?
Yeah, so again, it depends on what role you play. If you're somebody who's doing outbound sales and you're literally cold calling, or you're doing outreach through LinkedIn and things like that, if it's a reasonable number to do 30 outreaches a day, then that should be your baseline. That should be the absolute minimum, because most people are going to do the minimum, and that becomes what's the expectation of output for the team of people that you work around. So if you're trying to excel and stand out from your coworkers, you have to do more than they do, or you have to do the same amount of work but close more deals or have more output, whatever would be the appropriate thing. So if you are able to, again, communicate with everybody up and down the food chain of where you work, as well as set goals that are above what is expected, right? The baseline goal, we want you to do 30 outbound calls before lunchtime every day. Well, I want to do 40. I want to do 50. Maybe 50 should be my goal. Now, if I do a cold call and I actually get somebody's attention and that conversation takes a long time, okay, then maybe I'm not going to get 50 calls in. But if I close that deal, that was time well spent. That 50 outbound calls is based on the fact that you're going to get 3 wrong numbers. You're going to get 5 people that hang up on you. You'll get 5 more people that are polite enough to listen and say no thanks. And so those calls are all going to be fast, but you're going to get somebody's attention. And now those calls are going to be longer. But again, it balances out to, in between 8 a.m. and noon, I want to do 50 phone calls, because 30 is what's expected of me. So if I only get 30, I shouldn't beat myself up for that, because that's what was the expectation that was set. My own expectations were higher, but there might be extenuating circumstances as to why I didn't do more outbound calls. But if I got results by only doing half as many calls, I'm still exceeding, at least achieving, if not exceeding, the goals that were expected of me. So it's a little hard to answer that, in a blanket statement for every single job duty. But if you can apply what I just shared into whatever role you're playing as a listener who just heard me share that, that's kind of how I look at it, right? Whatever everybody else can do, that's my baseline, and I always want to aim higher than that.
Okay. So what would you say that is sustainable tempo or timeline for self-improvement? So when will the noticeable changes become obvious to ourselves and to others?
Yeah, good question. So it'll certainly depend on the type of change that you're making. If you're, let's use a tough one, like trying to quit smoking. It probably will take you more than one try, right? Because lots of people try by just stopping, throwing the cigarettes into the garbage can. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. And for 2 days at home in a controlled environment, they're okay. They can do it. Then they go to work and their smoke break buddy comes by and says, hey, you want to go outside real quick? It's like, no, I shouldn't. I'm trying to quit smoking. Come on, let's go. Right? They don't even realize that they're making it so much harder for you. So that's a tough one. It probably takes several tries before you're successful. Something as simple as I want to floss my teeth every day. You should be able to pick that habit up and just literally within a day, you do it. And then you put the floss right there on the edge of the sink so that you see it tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, you do it again. That should be simple enough that literally within a 24-hour period, you create a new habit. So those are both ends of the spectrum. It varies on the type of the habit that you're trying to change. If you're trying to eat less fast food or eat a healthier diet, again, there's pieces that go into that success. You have to go to the grocery store and buy food. Then you have to make it, preferably ahead of time. So that way, when you open the refrigerator, you see, oh, I've got 5 meals already made for the next couple of days. I'm not going to go spend money. I need to eat this. Otherwise, it's going to go bad. And now I wasted that money. So it's not as simple as I'm not going to go through the drive-through. You have to have other things in place that support that new habit. So it really is all over the map. And that's one of the fun things about self-optimization is that I try to help people find what either are weak spots that they don't see or patterns that they have fallen into, but that they're very aware of, and help them find ways to break out of that and start something new.
Mm-hmm. What are the most important tools of self-improvement? What would you say that are?
Without a doubt, self-awareness, because you need to know what your own strengths and weaknesses are before you can make any changes. And for some people, they are a lot better at things than they give themselves credit for. And for some people, they are a lot worse at things than they realize. And so, to use the salesperson analogy, being the VP of sales, this is something that I struggle with, and I try to do a really good job of it. But somebody who gravitates towards sales is typically a big picture person. They have a bunch of things going on all at once. Nothing is done in a linear process. I spoke to a client Monday who's thinking about using our services. I may not talk to them for 3 weeks. A whole bunch of other stuff happens in between. Instead of me talking to them Monday, and then Tuesday we follow up, and Wednesday they sign the contract, and Thursday we do some documentation work, and Friday they start with the service, right? In my business and in most types of sales, it doesn't work that way. So being diligent about my documentation, communicating with my team is something that I'm always striving to do better and better. But again, it's not something that comes naturally to me. Like my wife is an ER nurse. She would rather be doing chest compressions on somebody in the ER than stand in front of a room full of 12 people telling a story. There's no way I want to do chest compressions on somebody at the hospital. I voluntarily get up in front of a group of people to tell a story, right? That's my strength. But again, I always have room for improvement, even in a strength that I have. But there are things that I know I need to look at to continue to improve. So it has to start with the self-awareness. And if you feel like that's a struggle, then ask around. Don't ask just one person, because if somebody tells you, no, you're great, I love you the way you are, That's not helpful. We all have areas of improvement, right? So ask 5 of your closest friends or your coworkers, and then ask some people that don't know you as well and factor in what they say also. That'll give you a much sharper idea of what you might need to work on. And it might surprise you that it's not the things that you first thought of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to convey to our listeners about self-awareness and how this self-awareness coaching is going on? How they should work with the coach? What they can expect of the self-awareness coach?
Yeah, every coach is different, and every person is different. So don't feel like you need to test drive that relationship, because it has to be somebody that you feel comfortable with, because some of the conversations I have with people are very uncomfortable, right? Sometimes the driver on the behavior pattern that they're stuck in goes way back to some childhood trauma or some other incident in life that they haven't talked about, and they don't tie those things together right away. It takes a little while to get to the real root of the problem. So it takes a level of trust and comfort with somebody to be able to do that. So what I like to do, I can't really speak for other coaches that do what I do, but what I like to do is I will meet somebody for coffee or go to lunch with them and just talk. And I have my areas that I'm very comfortable helping people with, and I have areas that I absolutely stay away from. And I don't ever want to blur those lines. So if I'm talking to somebody and they're telling me, gosh, I have got to figure out where the company is losing money, that's not my area of expertise. If you want to find ways for you to be a better human being, to optimize yourself and have that pervade all of the other areas, including how good of an employee, how good of a CEO, a CFO, whatever it may be, that you can be, I'm your guy for that. So make sure that when you're shopping around, you find somebody that you're comfortable with, that their skill set matches your needs, and that, again, that it's a reasonable approach, right? I mean, I have to assume that there's people that are taking advantage of people that are, genuinely looking for help, and they just continue to, week after week say, okay, well, read this book, do this, and there's not a lot of actionable takeaways and measurable improvement to be had. Don't be afraid to fire somebody thinking that you failed. Maybe the coach failed you. So keep that in mind as you go through that journey as well.
Okay. So if I can recoup now,
Sure.
In order to self-improve, first, you need desire to change that is usually rooted in some kind of pain from the past or current pain. The action is an absolute must if you want to self-improve. Community is the number one skill, and it's most important for self-improvement.
Communication, yeah.
Communication.
Yes.
Healing is also important, because the pain and the problems they spill in other areas, so they make your progress practically impossible if you're not healed on a physical level, as you explained with the shoulder, and also on the mental level. If you have any mental problems, it would be wise to solve them first. Discipline is more important than motivation. When setting goals, set high goals. The self-awareness is one of the most important, skill of self-improvement. In order to get self-awareness, ask 5 of your friends or co-workers what they think, and also ask people you don't know what they think about you. They might reveal something that you're completely unaware of. And before you opt for a coach for any long-term relationship, test your coach if you two match.
Yep, that's a good synopsis. I think you covered the points that I was trying to share very well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much, Darrin, for being the guest on my podcast. And I will share all your details in the description below. so that
Great.
My listeners can know where to reach you. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.